Hello, this is Eleanor Beaton. Welcome to the 2% Scaling Strategies for Women Entrepreneurs who are on a mission to scale to 7 figures and beyond by unleashing the power of their voices. I'm so excited to be here with you today. We're continuing our series of conversations with incredible women leaders who I just adore their work, support their work, and love the ability to bring their message to our audience and share their story and messages with you. And in this series, we're talking about the realities of running multiple 6 and 7-figure businesses. We're taking you behind the scenes of what's working now in business, and we're sharing inspiring stories from extraordinary women leaders about how they are not only building their own companies, reshaping the narrative of what success looks like in business, but also really taking us behind the scenes of how they are bringing their larger impact to the world. And all of this, of course, is in the name of inspiring you to take your business and impact and voice to the next level. I am so excited to introduce AnneMarie Rodriguez de Killeen. She's a leadership coach and consultant. She focuses on human-centric leadership. She's the founder of Ruby Red Coaching and Consulting and the Feminist Coaching Collective. We're going to be talking about the Feminist Coaching Collective at length here in a moment. She is a New Yorker turned leader. Give it up. And we're so excited to have her here with us today. Hello.
Hi. I'm really excited to be here too. It's really nice to hear your introduction because I listen to your podcast and your every medium in which you speak regularly. So it's exciting.
I know. It's so great to have you here. I have been really looking forward to this conversation and diving in. There's so much to dissect and to talk about. And let's get started. The place that I wanted to start with is this idea of human-centric leadership. Because this is really core to the work that you do in all the aspects, of your business. What is human-centric leadership? Bring us up to par. What is it?
So human centricity is this idea that we create the foundation, the centerpiece of our business models, or any activity that we do, that we put the well-being and development of the people that we work with and we serve as the centerpiece of that strategy. And there's a reason. The reason is this: when people are able to thrive, when they're able to become and be their best selves, it's good for them as individuals. It is fundamentally good for business, and it has a domino effect into the society as well. So kind of a full circle moment. So it makes sense. To put. Hello.
Hey,
I've lost Eleanor. Hey, there. Yeah, I'm here. Okay. There you go. So it makes sense to put people as the center point, the centerpiece of any strategy. So that's what human-centric leadership is about. It's leading from a place of wishing to empower others and sincerely empower others to improve themselves and improve everything that they're touching as part of the process.
So I can remember when we first met, and one of the things that, we were talking about at the time was really bringing this message to the fore, and that that you really want the impact that was very important to you to have, both, in a very focused way on the organizations and people that you work with, but also in a much broader sense is this idea of putting humans at the center, humans and relationships and human well-being at the center. Tell me, as you started to uncover this work, have you been in situations where people haven't been at the center?
Yes. Go into almost every corporate environment.
So everywhere.
Almost everywhere. I think that there are two kinds of people that I'm working with at the moment. One is a group that work in environments which remain very traditional control and command styles of leadership, where we see a lot of competition, individualism, toxicity. But then there's also this other side, which is most of the people that I'm working with are people who genuinely sincerely wish to work in a more humane way, i.e., more integrity, more collaboration, more communication, but they're not quite getting it right. And that's basically the human condition, right?
Yeah.
We're all trying to do, we all want to do and live better and be better and be kinder to each other. But we do sometimes get in each other's way. And things like bias, for instance, can be a huge barrier to us being able to understand someone else's point of view and connecting with them in a way that is actually going to be beneficial for them and beneficial for yourself. So I still see an issue with this approach all the time. And there are really wonderful examples now, though. When I first started talking about this, I felt like I had to talk about it secretly, like under the dark of night. Like, we should be able to be more human. I used to get a lot of people telling me, "Oh, AnneMarie, you're looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses," or you're very woo-woo about this. Being a human being is not being woo-woo.
Yeah.
And being able to have to have the courage and conviction to work with integrity. If there was ever a time for humanity to be the driver for the decisions that we take in business and in industry and in society, it is today. So I was right.
Yeah. You were right all along. And that's the conclusion that I hope everybody who's watching us.
That's right.
Right? In addition to, but it's so interesting what you say, because what I find fascinating about this very specific time that we're in, I know, what we are seeing, whether you're looking at CrossFit, and the CEO of CrossFit, who, essentially with some offhand comments on social media, really hurt his company and the thousands of people who work for his company and the millions of people who around the world who engage in what his company offers. So there has never, where perhaps years ago, this idea of human-centric leadership may have sounded woo-woo. Now, I think there's a very clear case that it is tied to the bottom line. And is it something that you're giving lip service to, or is it something that you're actually being? And I think I love, I talk with my team a lot about the difference between doing and being. So it's not just, so when we think about business as usual, it's very much action and result. Versus business as unusual. And I think this place where we're going, we're starting to see the benefits of being. Like, are we being from a human-centric place? It's not just what we do, but it's who we are and how that filters down through how we show up, the relationships and so on. Do you think this current environment has given this notion of human-centric leadership more teeth?
Yeah, I do. But I also think it's about the generation. So, coming up, we all heard about the millennial generation and how they only wanted to work for companies that had, a good client eco score, or, companies that had purpose. And we all, I did not, but others would, boo-hoo them for being too soft and too fragile. Okay, guess what? They're the ones now in leadership, right? They're the ones. Jacinda Ardern is the Prime Minister of New Zealand and is the epitome. I think she's like a year out of the of being a millennial, but she is the epitome of today's leadership. And I think that's where the difference is. They're the ones now in positions where they're going to make real change, and they're the ones also in positions where they have jobs that are secure with the money. They're the consumers.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that are driving this.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned
just more power to them.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you mentioned Jacinda Ardern. She's a fabulous example of, so she would be an example, correct, of like the poster child of human-centric leadership. If you want to know what it is, just go, you can creep her Instagram feed as I do, and like watch everything she says and like have her little quote cards as sources of personal inspiration all the time. You know what I mean? Just be like, how can we plot to become her best friends? You can be like at that level, or you might want to scale it back and just pay attention to what she's doing. But anyway, I mean, why would you want to do that? But here's the thing that I find so fascinating about Jacinda Ardern, because sometimes, when you think about human-centric leadership and some of these soft things that have been characterized as soft skills. You might think that means that the leader is soft or takes a soft approach. First of all, I'm not sure what that means, but it's definitely a stereotype. But look at Jacinda Ardern's decisive action during COVID. She shut New Zealand down decisively, definitively, quickly, and they basically eliminated, and now they're back. So she took early, decisive, swift, severe, certain action. Jonathan Swift has to be swift, severe, and certain, I think. So she shut everything down quickly, and they basically eliminated COVID from the country and are now able to open up properly again, right? So that was not soft. That was actually having the guts to execute on human-centric leadership. No?
1,000%. And actually, there is nothing soft about good communication. Good communication, is about having the difficult conversations, right? There's nothing soft about collaboration, because working with other people, quite frankly, is really difficult, right?
It is.
Getting, right? Negotiating agenda, moving through silos, all these things, it's hard. And being individualistic and being directive in a control and command way, that's the easy way, quite frankly, because you're just plowing through, that's it. So it's a complete misnomer. You're absolutely right that these things are soft. These things are, these things are also not just female qualities. That drives me nuts as well, right? These are not just female qualities. These are somewhere along the line, and I can't remember the dates. I used to know them, but we had a change in our society where it was considered appropriate for men to hide the aspects of themselves, the part of themselves that was empathetic, that was collaborative, that was feeling, and it was the men that were asked to hide that, because the men were the ones that were allowed at work, right? That's the bottom line. But that creates quite a huge amount of dysfunction and unhappiness and anger and an inability to express oneself. So they were only ever going to bring half of themselves, be half as good as they could be to the party. And when women began to kind of go up the ladder, as it were, they were only allowed to exhibit the same behaviors, which then they were criticized for being too manly, too masculine, and that wasn't what they were doing. They just weren't allowed to be their full selves. And now, that's not the case. Now we're seeing that true leadership is a complete integration. It's bringing all parts of yourself, good and the bad, but bringing all parts of yourself, because that's exactly what you're asking others to bring to work, so that they're the best of themselves. I see this as very simple.
Well, and it's so interesting, because I think this sort of loops back to this idea of the human condition, and of course the human condition is that we are continuously mucking things up. We're continuously falling short. We continuously get it wrong. And we get a lot right in the process. So based on what I'm hearing from you, and I know this is like a micro lesson on human-centric leadership, there's so much more to this, but based on what I'm hearing from you and from this micro lesson, it would seem to me that one of the big qualities, like if you want to be more of a human-centric leader, I feel as though like one of the main qualities that you need to have is a pretty massive dose of self-forgiveness.
Completely. You have to be able to, it goes, we've all heard it, about making mistakes, being vulnerable. One of the really interesting things, and I know we're not going to talk about it today, but when we look at what's going on, I see this happening in the States around the conversations around race, around the conversations around white fragility. Excuse me. Part of the conversation is learning to have the conversation. And learning how to accept, how to put yourself out there and accept that you may get it wrong and it may come smacking in your face. And that's okay, and that you hold you learn hard, you learn fast, and you do better. Mm-hmm. That is a precious gift that the whole of society is getting right now, because you have to apply that same process to everything else. You know, to learn how to learn to accept those mistakes, to make them, to make them publicly, and hopefully not hurt anybody else along the way. But you
probably will.
Yeah, and you know what else we're learning in this process? We're learning the gift of forgiveness, not just forgiving ourselves, but how to forgive others. We may not forget, but we're learning to forgive, and I think it's such an important lesson, and really a gift for all of society. You know, we talk about this, the problems of good communication and conflict communication, and I live in a country that really does not do conflict well here in the UK. Excuse me.
True.
And we're just entering, I feel, we're just entering these more difficult conversations, and it's hard to watch. It's hard to be a part of. But thank goodness we're having them.
It's a good discomfort. And I mean, I think it's interesting, you know, this idea, there's something else that I think is, I suspect, an aspect of human-centric leadership that we are all experiencing right now, which is how to deal with anger, you know, and how to not run from anger, how to not cast blame, you know. Anger, other people's anger or your own anger, it is so uncomfortable. And one of the things that I have seen that I have been fascinated by is people's discomfort with anger. You know, that, oh, I will listen to you as long as you don't get angry. So don't get angry, and then I'll listen, you know, and then I'll be all ears. But the moment you get angry, I'm going to stop listening. And to me, that's part of where we need to lean in as well. And that I have been so fascinated by, and I have really asked myself, that's so interesting. How do I deal with my own anger? How do I deal with other people's anger? Do I try to avoid it, you know, or I feel like, again, from this micro lesson that you're giving in human-centric leadership, if it's really about sort of that human condition, leaning into anger and being present to it, not leaving. And that's part of the vulnerability too, to be able to stand there in the face of anger.
Yeah, I'm actually also interested in this too, in how we express anger in the workplace. So, you know, in most environments, if you do express anger, that's really looked down upon as immature, unprofessional, you know, immediate, industrial tribunal, inappropriate, you know, as a woman, so I've lived in the UK for almost 30 years, and I am a New Yorker, and I'm told that I'm not just like any other New Yorker because I'm very intensely chatty, but and opinionated. But what I noticed is I'm also very passionate and very creative. And so I worked in those kind of corporate environments, thankfully, where that was the norm, that kind of passion. It did mean, however, sometimes I would feel emotional, and I found myself deferring, crying because it was safer for them, right? I couldn't express myself in a way that I felt heard, right?
So the tears were a substitute for other types they were a safer substitute. Boom. Oh my goodness. That is fascinating. How many people can relate to that? How many that is fascinating.
Right. And I heard a gentleman, I can't recall his name. I think he's a dancer in the US, really big guy. And he was talking about how, as a Black man, excuse me, as a large Black man, the moment he raises his voice, just to express displeasure of any kind, people recoil in a way completely disproportionate to the situation. So he has to censor himself all the time. So this whole conversation about how do we express anger? Are we, you know, how do we do it in a way that isn't? We're not trying to discount, right? So that's where a lot of that comes from, and you see this playing out in social media with all these toxic language that's being used. You know, the name calling. That's different than it isn't different. It is a different type of expression of anger, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I know we both know Patricia Zegler, who is
Yes.
wonderful at this. She's the one we should be talking to in more detail about how we, as a society, how do we find a new way
Yeah.
of qualifying anger and allowing anger to be part of the way we express ourselves.
Yeah.
And love
Yeah.
on the other side of the coin, right? How do we find a way of saying, you know what, I'm working with these people 10 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week for years. I have affection for these people.
Yeah.
Why can't I talk about that? You know, why can't I? And so therefore we get disappointed in each other at a much deeper level than would be obvious, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, these are all parts of humanity.
These are all different aspects of humanity that come into. There's so much there, you know, so much there to talk about. And I want to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing through the Feminist Coaching Collective, because I think, you know, especially as we've been talking about things like emotion, anger, tears, you know, as we talk about being our full selves, like we're zeroing in on those 3 sort of areas because they've come up in our conversation. As I felt like I couldn't have those, you know, I felt like I couldn't bring that with me to work because now I'm at work, you know, and that's not appropriate. And I detest the word appropriate. Truly, anytime someone uses appropriate, they're trying to shut you down. Okay. So if you use the word appropriate, please eliminate it from your vocabulary.
So true.
Rolls from this part of the corner. But anyway, my point is this idea of bringing your full self, right? Your full self. And it's so interesting because we're both entrepreneurs. And we know a lot of entrepreneurs, and so many of the entrepreneurs that I know struggle with this. They want to stand out. They understand that they have a very specific blend of ingredients that they bring to the work that they do, and they want to ensure that's recognized. They want to stand out, but they struggle to bring their full selves, their fullness of their story to their business. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that, especially through the lens of the work that you're doing with the Feminist Coaching Collective, because so much of who we are as women has not been allowed, you know, in the business world. So to make it into a clear question, why did you start the Feminist Coaching Collective?
Well, it took me, I'll try to give you the short answer to that question.
You don't have to.
So it does apply to, you know, bringing our authentic self, bringing our full self, because it's not just authentic, it's the fullness of ourselves.
Yes.
And for me, I've always had an interest in to say I'm interested in politics is not true. To say I'm interested in policy and the impact of that on the lives that we live and the people in our environment, in our world, is true. And I found myself over the last few years being incredibly angry at what's been going on in our world, and not wishing to be a politician, not wanting to go down that route, for reasons I'll come to in a second. And at the same time, I love my work. I love my work so much, and I wanted to do that work. So how could I continue to do this work and feel good about that work whilst the world was spinning out of control? And I felt it really hard in my soul that, you know, where would I even begin? And what I found was that the people that I was working with, my clients themselves, were also experiencing this. I like what I do. I like my profession. I want to be the best I can in my job, but I want to do it in a way that it has more meaning and value. Maybe I should leave and go into the charity sector. You know, or go into, and they were finding it difficult to figure out a way of integrating all of themselves into their work. And I found that I found a way that I could make that happen for them and for me. And so what I realized was, whilst why didn't I want to become a politician? I didn't want to become a politician because because for women in particular, women in politics have the same challenges, the exact same challenges as women in business, but they're magnified. The scrutiny, the misogyny, because it's not just about the opposition. It happens within their own party as well. So when it comes to funding for campaigning, they might be the one who gets the short end of the stick within their own party for the available money to put towards rallies and posters and just simple things like that. And that frustrated me. So anyway, very long story short, I began to realize that I do have a gift and I do have a skill that is empowering to other people. So rather than trying to be one individual making a difference, one-on-one, if you like, what impact could I happen to have on the policies that are affecting our society? How could I be a better citizen in my community if I could potentially coach those people who are willing to put themselves forward and help them, lead them through the quagmire of the political process, the election process? Because I specifically focus my pro bono work, which is the Feminist Coaching Collective, is specifically for female candidates who are running for the very first time, or who have run before and lost, and now they're trying to run again. Because we've seen a tremendous increase in the U.S., particularly in the U.K. We've seen a tremendous increase in the number of women coming forward to run for office. What we haven't seen is a tremendous increase in the support for them.
Interesting.
And I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I can support them to empower their leadership, because again, it's the same skills in business that they need in political office, but they don't have the support. I have loads of friends here and people I work with who are in elected positions, and they tell me, the women who are already veterans in the political process do not have the available time to adequately mentor a lot of these young, new political women in politics. So this is what this is about: to make my contribution and to bring more, develop more women leaders. I focus in here in the UK, and my goal, the connection to my work is that I'm focused on working with any woman, any female candidate for any party, anywhere in the country, in any office, as long as they share a feminist agenda, which by my definition is an agenda that supports diversity, equality, and inclusion. And if you ain't behind that, then you're not going to work with me.
With us. So here's for those of you who are watching, no matter which platform, please go ahead and tag if you know of women who are either who are currently pursuing a political career as an elected official, or they want, this is something that you have encouraged them to do, or we're looking for the mini AOCs, right? Or the mini, the mini AOCs, the people who are, and it, that's who we're looking for right now. Those are the people. Please go ahead and and tag them in the comments so that they can learn more about AnneMarie and the Feminist Coaching Collective. Amazing. There's so much to say on this. Okay.
Wait, can I add one thing? Can I add one thing too? Just to say. So I have a collection of other coaches.
Yes.
I appreciate that I am not everyone's flavor of coach. So I do have a whole collection of coaches, some who are far left, some who are far right. It doesn't really matter what political party, but there is something for everyone. And these are qualified, highly experienced leadership and executive coaches. So it's not just me.
Collective. It's the Feminist Collective.
That's right. That's right.
Words matter. Okay. I love this. So as we wrap up, let's talk about your path as an entrepreneur. And there's so much to talk about here. But one of the things, you have had a very successful career in corporate, in the area of public relations and communications. I think anybody who can hear you understands this is a huge part of the skill set that you've got, and then you decided to become an entrepreneur, to start a business where you're able to bring skill set, passion, and really, money together, right? You're able to create an enterprise. I would love for you, what for those women who are listening now, and I know many of the women who are listening to this are in this boat. They have had very successful corporate careers as well. They've transitioned into entrepreneurship. They are running their business right now. What do you what have been the things that, sort of your tips or, core lessons that you would share with this group?
So for me, my interest in becoming an entrepreneur had nothing to do about being an entrepreneur. And so my interest was in doing the work. And I kind of wish that I had considered the entrepreneurial part on any level early on, because it just didn't. Because what it meant was that I was constantly afraid. I was constantly afraid of letting go of my old corporate existence, my consulting work, allowing myself to fully embrace what I really wanted to bring into the earth, and to bring into this world. And whilst I was doing that, I was doing my work, my projects. I never felt sufficiently committed or free to be sufficiently committed. So I think that's a common problem.
Yeah.
And so I wish I had considered early on what it meant to be an entrepreneur. That was, to me, it was a dirty word. I didn't want to say it. I didn't, ooh, no, money, no, what? I want money, but I just don't want anyone to think I want money, that kind of thing. But that began to, that did eventually begin to evolve. And I will say that a lot of the kind of coming together of everything happened for me when you and I started working together. So, being able to really understand what entrepreneurialism is and how empowering that is, and how freeing it is in order for me to become all that I am, and to bring all that I have in terms of my own skills and talents to the right audience, and to the right group of people. And so, fundamentally, that was the hardest shift, was really letting go. And I always think, whenever I talk about this, it reminds me of, look, Daddy, I have no hands, on your bicycle when you first, look, no hands. Look, I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true, though. It's so true. It's this idea that, and I think so many of us get into the work that we do because of the work, because we have this skill set, and the skill set is able to unlock a very specific type of impact. We know that, and that's what fuels us. And then it's about how do you, and the challenge is that business is its own little form, and we get to create the form, but being intentional about that can make the ride much easier, less overwhelming, and certainly more lucrative. So yeah. Listen.
And that's the word, intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. 100%. Yeah. You can design it the way that you want it, but sort of having that ability to be intentional about it. There's so much more that we could talk about, but I think we're going to leave it there. Listen, I know that people who are watching this now are going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to learn more about the Feminist Coaching Collective. They're going to want to learn more about human-centric leadership and how they can bring this unique brand of coaching and consulting work that you do to their lives and careers, or to their organizations and businesses. Where can they go? Where should we send them? And you do, guys, want to connect. I think, you've got just a taste of what AnneMarie offers and what she's like, but this is a conversation. These are conversations and connection you definitely want to have. So where should we send them?
So I would love to talk to people. I love having these conversations, actually, and I love the evolution of these conversations. So I'm pretty available to anybody who wants to talk about anything, not just about hiring me, but just talk about these topics. And the best way to talk to me, I think, is through LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Please communicate with me on LinkedIn. But I'm also on Instagram.
Star.
Yeah. I'm a huge LinkedIn star. Yeah, no. No. So no. But I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well, and Twitter. But Instagram and LinkedIn are my favorite ways of communicating. You can also check out my website, but really where I'm most active at the moment is on LinkedIn. So that's the best way.
And she's tagged here in this conversation, and on Instagram, she's at Ruby Red Coach.
Yes.
Ruby Red Coach. Write it down. We're only going to say it one more time, at Ruby Red Coach. Okay, awesome. AnneMarie, it is always so much fun to chat with you. Thank you so much to our incredible audience today. I would love if you could go into the comments and enter one takeaway. What's something you're taking away from our conversation today between myself and AnneMarie Rodriguez de Killeen about human-centric leadership, and really how do we bring and account for the human condition as we build and lead our organizations. All right, go ahead and post that in the comments. We will go and take a look afterward. Thank you so much, my friend, for being here. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.